Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. Another week in the books for the 2023-24 NBA season. 3 weeks in, and we're starting to see some movers and shakers right across the board. Of course, in the Eastern Conference, it seems like it's becoming a two-horse race the more the season goes on. Over in the West, it looks like the defending champions certainly have a right to maintain that position. And there looks to be a couple of challenges there as well. Of course, we'll get into that as the video goes along, and certainly as the season goes along. Few standout individual performances, a few players really taking the step, others having to step up where they can, and of course when you do look at the way some other players are playing as well, really coming out of the shadows, trying to improve their stock. Others, meanwhile, seem to just be dipping a little bit, and certainly their team's favours are certainly falling by the wayside in that department as well. So let's get into it. Let's get into week 3 of the 2023-24 NBA season, and we'll start with the Atlanta Hawks. They went 1-1 on the week, 5-4 on the season so far. Their best performer for the week, Trae Young, 34, 3, 9.5 assists and 2 steals with 4 turnovers. Inefficient shooting from the floor, although he did get it done from the stripe, as the Hawks went 1-1. Defeated Orlando 120-119. Barely got over the line there, and then weren't able to get the job done against Miami 117-109. And the real question there is, where will the team's efficiency improve? It is all well and good to be averaging 34 a game, but if you are doing it on 41%, then your workload is, really tiresome at this point. And on the other side of things as well, when you've got other guys who aren't as efficient as scoring, and they're not as efficient with their ball handling, or just as inefficient with their ball handling, I should say, you're always going to be in a spot of bother. So it'll be interesting to see how the Hawks overcome this. Again, it's going to depend on who chooses to be the absolute number one of this team. It is Trae Young's team. Is he the best option as a number one, though? That's the real question there. The whole Steph Curry argument certainly out the window, and has been for some time. But the Hawks 1-1, 5-4 on the season, and you just have to wonder when their efficiency will improve. Over to Boston, 3-1 on the week, 8-2 on the season. They are flying. They are one of the 2-3 best teams in the league right now. Have a perennial All-NBA contender with them as well. Jason Tatum, another good week for him. 25.3 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal, 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers, and reasonable splits from the field, 48.6, 36.8, and then 73.9 from the line. And of course, suffered that loss there to Philadelphia in a really tight game, but did win their next 3, of course, defeating Brooklyn 121-107, Toronto 117-94, and the Knicks 114-98. The only question that I've got for the Celtics right now, as far as making a championship run, or certainly making a finals run, is can they handle Philadelphia in a playoff series? That's their ultimate test right now. They need to be preparing all season to go 7 games with Philadelphia in the Eastern Conference Finals. That should be their only goal right now. If there's anything more, anything less to it, I'd be shocked. But that should be their number one aim as we speak. They've got a combo there of Tatum and Brown who can get it done. They've got a third option now in Porzingis, who's still running around at 20 a game and playing some good defense. You've got Drew Holiday, who's back to himself, had one bad playoff series and essentially got rode off by the general NBA community. You've got Derek White, who's stepping up and putting in some most improved numbers, really playing his part defensively as well. And then you've got all the key cogs around them, trying to complement them and get the job done. So Boston, 3-1 on the week. Jason Tatum having a good season. Ultimately, for the Celtics right now, they need to focus on the fact that Philadelphia is certainly up ahead of them. It'll be a 7-game battle, and I think whoever wins that series goes on to the NBA Finals at this stage in the Eastern Conference. Over to Brooklyn, 2-1 on the week, 5-5 on the season. Slowly improving, slowly starting to find their feet. I thought their best player on the week, when you consider all 3 games, was Lonnie Walker. 15.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 0.7 blocks, less than a turnover a game. Good efficiency from the field, 50% there. 50% from deep, 100% from the free throw line. Got wins over the Clippers 100-93 and Washington 102-94. Did suffer that loss there to Boston. But the big thing right now for Brooklyn, especially with Cam Thomas out, they need to start recognising the efficient hot hand and the efficient offensive player for their team. If they're going to be in a situation where all they can constantly do is look to spread the scoring, or yep, you're our number one option, so therefore you need to be the number one option. This team's going to just continue to be a bunch of pieces in a jigsaw puzzle that fit. Sometimes they fit, sometimes they connect, sometimes they paint a whole picture, but generally speaking, they are just a bunch of mismatches that can't really gel. Again, I still think this team needs that number one player, and if they did have it, then all of a sudden, yeah, you're talking about a team that does really stand out and does become a genuine top six in the East, and this is where I sort of thought they would be. But right now, Cam Thomas out, they just need to consistently find that offensive threat, consistently find that hot hand, and it has to be the efficient hot hand. Of course, you're not going to hear many people say Lonnie Walker should have the ball, but I'll take a guy who's potentially going to bump up to 20 points a game, take a hit at 48%, still be scoring and not turning the ball over much, versus guys shooting 42, 43% from the field. Really simple stuff. Addition by subtraction for Brooklyn. Over to Charlotte, a nice week for them. 1 and 2 could have been a lot worse, could have been a lot better. But certainly when you look at the structure of their team, it really, really could have been a lot worse if they'd have gone down to Washington. Absolutely disastrous. 3 and 6 on the season. LaMelo Ball with a really nice week, a really efficient week. 30 points, 5.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks, 3.3 turnovers. You know, part and parcel of the pace of the game and possessions now. Efficient scoring though, 57.4 from the field, 44% from deep, 76.9 from the stripe. As I mentioned, got that win against Washington, 124 to 117. They did split that series, and they did lose to New York as well, and both conceding big scores. First game against Washington, 132 to 116. Second game, New York, 129 to 107. They've got scoring. It's clear they've got scoring. Players like putting points on the board. They've got reasonably efficient scorers at times, which is a change compared to previous years. They're clearly able to get on the rebounds. Mark Williams has been huge on the glass for them. But if you don't have any defense, extra possessions and scoring aren't going to do a thing. It's all right to put 117 on the board, but 124 on the board and a win. But if you concede 132 and 129, just undoing all of your good work there. So there is a bit of work that needs to be done there for Charlotte, there's no doubt about it, mainly on the defensive end, because as we said, they can score, they can generate a high-octane offense, but if you can't stop people from scoring against you, then it just, it's to no avail, it's just a waste. So we'll see what they can do. They need to really put some effort in there. I don't know how they're going to go about trying to get someone who is capable defensively to get on this team. There's still, for some reason, talk about Bridges coming back into this team, which I certainly hope he's never in the NBA again. But yeah, it'll be interesting just to see how this pans out for Charlotte. Again, 1 and 2 on the week, 3 and 6 on the season. If they can tighten up their defense, it's going to be a completely different looking side. But until they do that, they're just going to be jacking points up left, right, and centre. Over to Chicago, 1 and 2 on the week, 4 and 7 on the season. And they've had some consistent performance throughout the last couple of seasons, but Nikola Vucevic has sort of been relegated to that second, third pinch-hitting option. And he had a really good week. 24.3 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.3 steals and a block on 1.3 turnovers. Pretty reasonable scoring for him. I mean, he's been a walking double-double in the league for the best part of a decade. Consistently one of the best double-double guys in the league as far as points and boards is concerned. Never really had much going in Orlando, just on the limitations there. When you look back, had some okay pieces, nothing great, but guys that certainly turned into championship level pieces when they were in championship teams. Vucevic, unfortunately, not able to get the same sort of reward right now, but still plugging away where he can. Chicago's 1 and 2 week, very interesting there. They lost a game against Phoenix. They probably could have won. And again, just with the fortunes of Milwaukee, you would think they probably could have got the win there as well. But they were able to get over the top of the Detroit Pistons, 119 to 108. Trade talks are back up again for this team. It started with Zach LaVine. It eased off Zach LaVine. It's now back on Zach LaVine. There's talk that DeMar DeRozan doesn't even want to talk contract until he knows how the team's going to look. And then on top of that, Alex Caruso is apparently a target as well. So sooner rather than later, this team's going to have to make a decision. How long are we going to try and stay together? How long can we work for? If they're going to continue to push and play around like this team will get to the All-Star break, make a decision and go from there. And you would think that decision at that point is going to be to blow the team up. How much you blow it up, I don't know. Who you keep, I don't know. Where you trade everyone, what you get back, I don't know. But this is just another, unfortunate for Chicago, an experiment that hasn't worked. I mean, 2 seasons ago, DeMar DeRozan's running around as one of the most clutch players in the league. Last year, they couldn't string 3 games together. And then we're not even a month into the season, and there's a fair chance that we don't see this team looking the same at Christmas. So I don't know what's really going to happen here. I think Vucevic is going to be one of the unfortunate victims of it. He's either going to be really happy to be hanging around here and getting more possessions and opportunity and trying to build something, or they're going to try and ship him out. He's going to have to play a secondary role. Maybe that's going to work for him. I don't know. DeMar DeRozan's a guy who's still able to get shots up and score. LaVine's still a guy who can score. Caruso heading into the absolute, zenith prime of his career, basically. Don't know what the Bulls do. They've got some pieces. If they really wanted to make the most of them, they could. But they've also got some pieces that allow it to blow it up easy. Interesting times ahead for Chicago. Cleveland 1-2 on the week 4 and 6 on the season. Their best performer was Caris LeVert in week 3. 24 points, 4.3 rebounds and 3 assists, and 1.3 steals and 0.3 blocks. And again, a lot of it come down to efficiency as well. Less than 2 turnovers a game. Around that 49% mark from the field. Over 37% from deep and 80% from the free throw line. Especially as a second option. If you get that out of a player, you'd be pretty happy as a team. Good to see him stepping up on the week. Cleveland, as we mentioned, 1-2. The defeated Golden State, 128-110, but that defense just letting them down. Conceding 128 points in a loss to OKC and conceding 132 to a Sacramento team that only just welcomed back De'Aaron Fox. I think the real fear at the moment is the pecking order of this team. Donovan Mitchell, clearly the leader of the team, has been the leader of the team for some time, but Evan Mobley's coming out of his skin really quickly. Caris LeVert, a capable player. Plenty of options there in Cleveland, as we know. But if they're not going to get that pecking order correct, then they're not going to have any success. And until they get that pecking order correct, until they are able to sort that success, they may continue to just flounder where they are. I think that loss to the Knicks in the playoffs has really rattled them. I don't think they've been able to get any continuation since that point. I don't think they've found a reason to repair since that point. A little bit of work to do in Cleveland. Again, they had their best season since outside of LeBron, which was last season, and before that it was 1998, with a part-washed Sean Kemp and all-star Terrell Bryan. So, this team sort of bridging that gap pre-LeBron, post-LeBron, but that's all it's done. And by bridging the gap, I mean making a playoff series and losing to the Knicks. So I think there's just fear among the pecking order here as who number 1, 2 and 3 is, who's going to take control, who's going to have the leadership, all of that sort of stuff. I think that's really the big implication on this Cavs team at the moment. They just need to work through it. They need to understand, yes, Donovan Mitchell's the reason we made the playoffs last year. Okay, we certainly have Evan Mobley developing into this really great player. We need to be able to harness that and get him in as well. And all these other guys need to realise there's a reason they're not a number 1 team. Well, they're not a number 1 option on a team. Well, once they realise that, they'll be fine. But until that point, I think that fear of the pecking order is really going to be impacting them more than people like to think. Now, of course, we do continue on over to Detroit, and they've just gone from bad to worse. Really easy, simple one. Didn't win a game all week. They're 2-9 on the season. Cade Cunningham continues to really burn through possession of the basketball at an extremely inefficient rate. They didn't win a game. They conceded 114, 119 and 120 points respectively. And at the end of the day, they need someone efficient to run their offense. It's all right to be a name and all right to be a pick, but if you're not going to be successful, it doesn't matter. And that's where Detroit are right now. Really easy, simple review for the Pistons. Get some efficiency into your offense. Get some control into your offense. Results will start to show. Over to Indiana. 2-1 on the week, led by Tyrese Halliburton, with a massive, massive week for him. 23.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 13.3 assists, 1 steal, 0.7 blocks, 1.3 turnovers. Epically efficient with the basketball. Look at those huge assist numbers, low turnovers, just dominance of the ball, and unfortunately just, had a career game almost. 25 and 17, no turnovers, and Tyrese Maxey had 50. Hard to compete with that. 58.1 from the field, 42.9 from deep, 100% from the stripe. The leader in their game against Utah, the leader in their game against Milwaukee, a team capable of putting up points. And unfortunately, I think Tyrese Halliburton could very well miss all NBA selection purely by being a traditional point guard. Yeah, he's leading their offense, but it's purely from the fact that he's more of a traditional pass-first point guard. He runs your offense in the sense he wants to lead you in points, he wants to lead you in assists. and he's able to be a genuine facilitator. But when you look at the way the league's constructed and played now, is that going to be enough to be an All-NBA team? For me, of course it would be. In fact, at the moment, I would certainly have him, as far as you're looking at your guard performances this year, he's All-NBA second team. But he's probably going to slip to the third team, and if he didn't make it, I wouldn't be shocked. Just is the way the league is, just the way the game is being played now. But don't sleep on Tyrese Halliburton. Don't sleep on Indiana. I don't know why people were doing it, considering the way they played last year when healthy. And they're still healthy this year, and they're still getting that production. Just shows how many people actually watch the league as to how they rate Indiana. So we'll see how they continue to go, see how they continue to play, but they've really got a guy who's taken that next step into that absolute upper echelon of point guards in the league. Speaking of guys who have taken the next step and taking that moving into the upper echelon of positions in their league, definitely to start this season, that's Bam Adebayo, and that's why Miami are having some really good success here over the last couple of weeks. 3-0 on the week just gone, now up to 6-4. Bam sitting as the third best center in the NBA, which is kind of scary to say because Jokic is daylight by a stretch. I think Embiid is currently daylight by a stretch, and I think that it's daylight third there as well for Bam. Just the way he's playing, and he's getting it done on both ends, and that for me is scary because then Sabonis sits at fourth. So you got a nice, really good mix there. Of course, the way Bam played this week, 26.7 points, 13 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 2 steals, 1.7 blocks, 2.3 turnovers, over 55% from the field, over 80% from the free throw line. Got the wins against Memphis, Atlanta, and San Antonio. So how much you weigh into the form of those teams, I'm not too sure. But when you're going to look at the fact that he competed against Jaren Jackson Jr., he competed against Clint Capella, and he competed against Victor Wembanyama, pretty good week individually there for Bam. Has he finally taken that next step? I think so. The problem is he's not wanting to fit into a mould, he's wanting to play his own game. 6'9", 6'10", can defend, can score, can rebound. Everyone wanted to mould him into this Kevin Garnett-esque player because that is what they wanted him to be. That's how they saw him to be. And that's how the team was going to have success, fitting off the attitude of Garnett, it with Jimmy Butler. All of a sudden, he's just out there playing his own game, doing his own thing, and having a lot of success with it. So I think a big credit to him. He's taken that step. Depends how Jimmy sits, depends how the rest of the team sits. He's obviously stepped up with the absence of Hero, but maybe Hero can see, hey, look, me as a second, third option's always been good for this team. Maybe I can continue doing it. Massive props to Bam. Having an all-NBA level season once again, an all-defensive level season once again. The Miami Heat looking better than they certainly did at the start of the year, just with the way he's playing. And again, you can never count out the Miami Heat. They've just got something about them. You see that in sports a lot, and it's rare that teams follow through with it. Miami's done it twice in 4 years. Great to see the performance that they're delivering there. Over to Milwaukee, they played 4 games. They went 2-2 on the week, 6-4 on their season. And Giannis, despite all the absolute, it's just crazy to think because there was some absolutely ridiculous lines for all players across the across this week. Giannis, 34.8 points, 10.5 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1 steal, 1.3 blocks, 4.5 turnovers, not ideal. Again, you look at pace and possession for a lot of these guys, the way turnovers are going now. 62.4 from the field, 14.3 from deep. We're not shocked, 64% from the line. 2-2, as I mentioned. It is going to be just how many points they do concede that does look to cost them if they're not careful. And on top of that, they are at times actually struggling to score. You go from a game in Indiana where you lose scoring 124 points, and then your next game against Orlando, you lose and you only scored 97 points. Meanwhile, in their wins, against Detroit, they win by 2, scoring 120. Against Chicago, they win by 9, scoring 118. So it's a matter of finding that balance, which is something I really want to highlight here. Can the team balance out? But then can they let Damian Lillard shine late? Because ultimately, right now, that's exactly what they're going to have to do. The way this team is, it's going to have to be like in that first game. Your first 3 quarters, let Giannis lead the way. Yep, let Lillard get his points. Let Middleton get his points. Let Lopez get his points and step in. All of these guys that can really play and do their bit for the team as they have for the last few seasons, let them continue to do it. But you've got to get enough touches into Dame in the fourth quarter when it's time to go, you know what? You're one of the biggest bucket getters of the last decade, particularly in the crunch. So we need you to be ready. If he's not going to be ready, he's going to be cold, then you're not going to get the results. I think that's the balance that Milwaukee need to get right now. amongst their team. He's getting everyone good looks, getting everyone involved, getting everyone committed to the cause. And then you've got to say, yep, we got one of the best finishers in the league, especially for the last decade on our team. And we got him in the off-season. He's pretty happy to be here. We want to commit to win a championship, and I think that's going to be the only way they're going to be able to do it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how they continue to work on that balance there. But they've also got to do it, as I mentioned, with getting that balance to get the shine on Damian Lillard and just let him execute there and try and bring it home for the team. To New York, to the Knicks, 2-1 on the week, 5-5 on the season. Scary to think that Julius Randle is back to being one of their better players, considering all the arguments right now over leadership that's allegedly going on with this team. Randle, 23.7 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. That's traditionally been a stat line we've seen of him for the last 3 years. 1.3 steals, didn't get a block, less than 3 turnovers. It's the inefficient scoring here. You can't be a big man shooting less than 50%. You can't take as many threes as he does and not at this point shoot 35%. If you're going to get to the line, you've got to make them. I don't mind a big shooting 7 or 10. But at the rate he likes to shoot free throws, he needs to probably shoot a little bit better. Again, defeated San Antonio 126-105, defeated Charlotte 129-107, failed to put points on the board against Boston 114-98. They've just got to work in harmony to win another playoff series. But with the way the East is right now, everyone's playing for third place, and that includes Milwaukee. But again, if they're going to go up against an Indiana, they're not going to win. If they're going to go against Miami, they're not going to win. If you're not going to win against Philadelphia and Boston, Milwaukee. So all of a sudden, you're not a team that's even looking like a semi-finalist. A lot of work to do for the Knicks there, but they just need to be in harmony for a playoff series win. I don't exactly know what the issues are with Brunson and Randle. I can certainly sense where there would be some jest from Randle because he was the man before Brunson turned up. I can also sense some jest from Brunson because they didn't do anything significant until he turned up, and he was the huge catalyst and clearly the difference in them last season. If they can just work it out and understand that, yep, we're the two guys that can score 25 a game. RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly are certainly going to chip in. RJ Barrett's going to eventually step up at some point. We need to use him. Again, it becomes a different team. And of course, the trade rumours with Embiid were still there, but they're probably going to die down now that Tyrese Maxey's turning into one of the best guards in the league. I think Joel Embiid's pretty happy to be playing next to that guy. So let's see whether the harmony can work for New York. They're going to need it to get a playoff series. They got 2 rounds in last year. I think that was a pretty decent achievement. But if you're going to go 2 rounds in, you've got to look to be going 2, maybe 3 rounds the following year. At this point, they're not even going to win 1. Bit of work to do for New York. Again, it's getting that chemistry and that harmony amongst the team for them to get a result. Orlando, only the 2 games this week, 1-1, 5-4 on the season. Paolo Banchero with a decent week again. A guy who's going to be a perennial All-NBA contender for a good part of his career. 21.5 points, 10 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1 steal. Didn't get any blocks, 4 turnovers a game. Passable shooting splits there from the field. Needs to work on the free throws. Lost to Atlanta by a point. Could have been 2-0. Defeated Milwaukee. When's Jonathan Isaac going to see more court time? Defensive impact is going to be huge for every team this year, and we're already starting to see it with the analytics that are being reported, with the statistics that are being recorded, with the actual video analysis and breakdowns that are being done across the league of players. Why isn't Jonathan Isaac getting way more minutes? It's clear he's their best defender. He's one of the best defenders in the league. But if he's not going to get a chance to prove it and deliver it, then, why is he getting 12 minutes a game? As much as I really dislike the idea that big teams attack small markets when small markets have pieces and small markets relent, if I am a Los Angeles Lakers and I see that Jonathan Isaac is available and I'm not getting what I want out of Christian Wood, or I need someone to come in and pinch hit for Anthony Davis, I'm going to Jonathan Isaac. Because then you have an absolutely dangerous defensive tandem. One of the best defensive tandems, if not the best defensive tandem in the league at that point. And I think Orlando could really utilise him a lot more. They look a lot better when he's playing, when he's getting more minutes, when he's upping their defensive intensity. Because that's one thing that's started to lift with the league right now again. Players that can get in, players that can defend. So, yeah, I just think Orlando need to play him more. I mean, they're 5-4, they're playing really well. But I think they'd be a lot better if he's going to get minutes. He's efficient when he gets his minutes. He doesn't need to be that big scorer. Again, it's the big thing that took Minnesota 12 months to work out with Rudy Gobert. oh, geez, Rudy Gobert's not scoring a lot. Rudy Gobert wasn't brought there to score a lot. Rudy Gobert was there to play defense and pinch hit in the dunker spot. Now all of a sudden he's allowed to just pinch hit in the dunker spot, rebound and play defense. And all the key cogs that need to in Minnesota are doing that, what they need to do as well. I just think more minutes for Jonathan Isaac. This Orlando team looks a lot better. Speaking of looking a lot better, Philadelphia racing away to being arguably the best informed team in the league right now. 3-0 on the week, 8-1 on the season. Haven't missed a beat since they got rid of James Harden. And here's a guy who's relished it and dominant all across the field, all across the court. Dominated this week. Tyrese Maxey, 34.7 points, 7.3 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.3 steals and 2 blocks, 1 turnover a game, 50-40-90 splits, had a 50 piece. Can't say much more. Had probably the best per week by a guard this season so far. They defeated Boston 106-103, defeated Detroit 114-106, defeated Indiana 137-126. So in these quite grit and grind games, like the 106s, 103s, they can get it done. In those mid-range, where they need 114, they can get it done. And if they need to push the pace and really run a high-octane offense, they can get it done too. So my big question right now for Philadelphia is, can they make a run to the NBA Finals? Much like Boston, they've got to keep their eye on one team in the East. Boston are watching Philly, Philly are watching Boston. And it's one of, if not the most decorated rivalry as far as games played against one another in league history. Does it have another chapter? I certainly hope so. Philadelphia on a roll, Maxey on a roll, Embiid looking like one of, if not the best player in the league. Massive, massive props to Philly right now, who are just getting it done. Speaking of starting to get it done, that's the Toronto Raptors. 2-1 on the week, 5-5 on the season, and they're perennial All-NBA and All-Star contender for the last 4 or 5 years. Their best player for the week, Pascal Siakam, 29 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals. Only had the blocks there as well. 4 turnovers, 54.5 from the field, 62.5 from the stripe. Has he started to finally find a groove is the real question. If Siakam's starting to find a groove, Scotty Barnes is still in his groove, all defensive level. Anunoby still in his groove, all defensive level. Toronto start to look like a playoff team again. And I wouldn't be sleeping on them, particularly with those three, particularly with their ability on both ends of the ball. Again, everyone talks about, they've got Siakam's got to leave, or Scotty Barnes has got to leave, or OG Anunoby's got to leave. Again, this is the crazy thing I don't get about the way the league looks at these teams. If you're Toronto and you've got these pieces and you know other team want them and they see value in them, they're not giving you much value back, why are you going to commit to a trade? It doesn't make any sense at all to make that trade, to make that move. Understand what you've got, understand how you can use it. And Toronto are starting to do it, as I mentioned. Love the way Siakam plays his game. Love the way Scotty Barnes plays his game. Love the way Anunoby plays his game. But they have to make the most of it. And if they're not going to make the most of it, then, what are you squandering the opportunity for? Jakob Poeltl's been nice. They've got other players around. Gary Trent Jr. is another one. If you're going to have your 3 leaders and then have all these other pieces around that are starting to complement, Dennis Schroeder as well, what are Toronto trying to blow it up for? If Siakam's finally hitting his strides, if Barnes has taken that next step, if Anunoby's clearly that all-defensive level player they think he is, why blow it up? I just think if Siakam has started to finally find his groove, I think this team's going to be okay. I think they're going to be just fine. 5-5, not a bad start. However, what isn't a good start is the Wizards, who have no magic whatsoever. In fact, they need a new wand. Harry Potter would be highly unimpressed with the wizardry here of Washington. 1-3 on the week, 2-8 the season. Kyle Kuzma, once again, their best player, and it's not necessarily a compliment. 24.8 points, 5.5 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.5 blocks, 3 turnovers. 46.3 from the field, 35.7 from deep, 76.5 from the free throw line. They defeated Charlotte. Great. They then lost to Charlotte, they lost to Brooklyn, and then they didn't beat Toronto, and they choked away Toronto. When's Daniel Gafford just going to get more touches in their offense? He's looked like their most efficient player, and he's a capable defender. You know, I always wonder with players like Kuzma, with players like Paul, who were so important to championship teams. People won't want to admit Kyle Kuzma's importance to that bubble championship. People don't like that Jordan Poole was important to that Warriors championship. You know, it makes me wonder why they eventually leave. Now, I understand the circumstances with Poole. And don't get me wrong, Poole certainly hasn't had a reason to be really squawking about him so far this season. You've only got to look at the way that he conducts himself so far. But it's clear the Warriors missing. It's evident that the Warriors missing. And again, he's been inconsistent this year, but I'm sure Steph Curry would rather have Jordan Poole being inconsistent and still trying to get points on the board than the effort that his team's put forward this year. You know, Kyle Kuzma's another one. Imagine if he was playing at the Lakers right now. Just, makes me wonder. And then from a leadership standpoint, the maturity isn't there. This is why, you look at someone like a Gafford, and again, it's not a household name, and everyone asks questions. Oh, what do you, if the guy's efficient, if the guy's playing both ends of the floor and he's proven he can get it done, why don't you give him an opportunity? It's not going to hurt Washington. They're 6 games of below 500. They're not doing anything this season. Their season was over by week 2. Why not have a look? See how it all unfolds. As I said, what's the absolute worst that's going to happen if Daniel Gafford gets a couple of extra possessions? Of course, top 10 in the East right now. 76ers and the Celtics, clearly the best player, best 2 teams in the East, arguably the best 2 teams in the league, along with the Nuggets. Pacers and Heat right on them. The Bucks are starting to heat up. I don't know how the Hawks are where they are. Orlando's ticking through. The Nets, slowly getting there. The Raptors, slowly getting there. The Knicks, slowly getting there. I'm not necessarily a big fan of either New York team right now, but that is where the Eastern Conference sits. Meanwhile, East Player of the Week, really simple there. Tyrese Maxey with the best perimeter performance by a player this year. 34.7 points, 7.3 rebounds, 7 assists, 1.3 steals, and 2 blocks a game. Played all 3 games, played nearly 40 minutes a game. 3-0, massive week, career high 50. Not much more that you can say. A genuine effort from him. Good to see him putting in the effort, doing as well as he can. It does make you wonder exactly where Philadelphia are at. Maxey certainly looking like he's going to be that all-star level player. Embiid back to that MVP level player, both on a scoring tangent. Very, very good work there so far by Philadelphia, and particularly by Maxey, who's probably well and truly shooting up the most improved ladder so far this season. Over to the Western Conference now, and we start with the Los Angeles Clippers, who have seemingly gone from a fringe playoff team to going to be fighting from a long way back to even try and save their season. 0-3 on the week, 3-6 on the season. Their best player was Kawhi Leonard, and it certainly wasn't anything to brag about. It was 2012 level Kawhi Leonard Player of the Week stuff. 19 points, 4.7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal and a block a game. Pretty efficient as far as time in possession. Not necessarily from the field though. 44.7 shooting, 28.6 from deep, 91.7 from the line. Lost all 3 games. Brooklyn conceded a lot of points against Dallas and even lost to the lowly Memphis Grizzlies, who at this point have looked like one of the worst teams in the league. And I think the ultimate question right now is who won't be on the team in 24-25. It's that simple. Doesn't matter what's going on with Kawhi, doesn't matter what's going on with Paul George, doesn't matter what Russell Westbrook looks like, James Harden. Who's not going to be there next year is the ultimate question, because they're not all going to fit under the cap. They're not all gelling. I know it's early, but history is just repeating itself with James Harden. Really easy, simple stuff there. Philadelphia managed to get success right now. Can the Clippers get success after this year with cap space? Maybe. I'm not too sure. But the future's looking pretty bleak in the immediate, that's for sure, for the Clippers. They're now, well, they haven't won a game with James Harden yet, so we'll see what they can do. But right now, I think it's a matter of working out who will and won't be on this team in the 24-25 NBA season. Dallas 2-1 on the week, 8-2 on the season though, so they're having a really good run. Luka Doncic with a big week and an efficient week, albeit as well. 35 points, 5.7 rebounds, 7.7 assists, 2 steals and 0.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. 60% shooting from the field, and the big one here as well, 42.9 from deep. Luka not a known, consistent three-point shooter as far as efficiency is concerned, but picking it up there, I'd still like to think a guy who gets to the line, though, can shoot at least 80% from the stripe. They did lose to Toronto, but then they ran up some massive scores there against the Clippers and New Orleans. And it's a question that many people ask of Harden, but it's one that I think needs to be asked of Kyrie at this point, and is that he sort of needs to play himself into shape. I'm not saying Kyrie doesn't have big pre-seasons, but it seems to take Kyrie 2 to 3 weeks to really gel and really get into things over the last couple of years. Now, obviously, there's been a lot going on, but just really strange that Kyrie isn't coming in fit and firing, particularly next to Luka on a Dallas team that really could use him fit and firing instantly. So the rest of the team's looking okay. They're starting to pick up a little bit. Kyrie's starting to really be that true second option we thought he could be. But it's really weird. It seems to be that he's playing himself into shape. I don't know whether a guy with the baggage that Kyrie has should really be trying to play himself into shape. Haven't been any quote-unquote incidents so far this year with Kyrie, which is sort of good. Well, it is good to see, meaning that he's in a happy place. There was talk that he was going to go to Los Angeles in the off-season, but happily committed back to Dallas there. Luka playing well, Kyrie playing well, does make them a really tough matchup. And as you can see, they have a really nice start to their season. They are going to have to keep this up, though, because the expectation of Dallas right now is certainly pushing at least deep into the semi-final round, let alone into the conference finals. That is the point that Dallas are slowly reaching as a team. Speaking of reaching it as a team, that is the Denver Nuggets. 1-1 on the week, but 8-2 on the season, and continue to look like a genuine championship repeat contender. Their best player, Nikola Jokic, just a stupid week. 35.5 points, 17 rebounds, and 8 assists. Now compare that to Luka, who was 35, 5.7 at 7.7. Jokic, essentially the same scoring, 12 more rebounds, same assists. 1.5 steals, blocks he always can be a little bit better at. We do know that, but as an offensive centre, that's just how he plays. 3 turnovers a game, 52.9 from the field, 21.4 from deep, 77.8 from the line. Now, to give you an idea, right now in the season, Jokic 30, 14 and 8 on 58% from the field. Dominant. Golden State, they defeated by 3 in a tight game, did lose to Houston in a tight game. I think the real call is going to be whether this bench can lift during the season. Jamal Murray's not in, so trying to really make anything of Denver right now at the moment is tough, but they've started really, really strong, and I certainly wouldn't want to be running into them regardless of that exit of Murray. They're playing some good basketball. They've got the best player on the planet on their team. Really not much more that has to be said for them. They are just balling out right now, but again, I do just wonder whether the bench is the main concern on this one here, because you know, they had a little bit of depth last year, and that's been the ultimate thing for them. But it's going to be a matter of consistently developing that depth and, you know, trying to tell the bench to step up where they can. I just think that's going to be the concern for this team. It was my concern at the start of the year, very top-heavy. But they've started really strong, and the best player on the planet is being the best player on the planet. So there's really not much more that has to be said on that one there. Over to Golden State, there's a lot that should be said about Golden State right now. They are 0-3 on the week, now at 6-5, and they've gone from looking like a senior team that can certainly compete towards the Western Conference Finals to a team that if Steph Curry isn't going to run around, have 30 points a game on 50, 40, 90 shooting, then this team is nothing. And there are some senior players on that team that don't seem to be committed if he's not going to be doing that. Of course, Steph had a really nice week, 30.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, 4 turnovers, not ideal. It's then the shooting splits that really define just exactly the kind of week that they've had. Less than 40% from the field, still that 3-point percentage below his average, but still around that 38% mark. Can't complain about that. Converting 9 out of 10 times the line. Who else besides Steph on this team, honestly? As much as I love the fact that Bob Myers is an analyst on ESPN and talks about going to his star player and appeasing his star player and trying to make the most if you're a general manager out of your guy to try and have your window open as long as possible. It certainly doesn't seem like, when you really reflect back on Golden State, other than Kevin Durant, when you reflect back on how they did things, it's probably a miracle and shows how great of a player Steph is, because there wasn't really much working with it outside of 2019. Jordan Poole is now gone. Andrew Wiggins no longer is allowed, or is really playing with some freedom. Draymond Green. Klay Thompson hasn't been the same player since he tore his ACL, which is understandable, of course. Everyone's going to be watching this after the Minnesota game. I think that's a bleeding example, right? I think it makes a lot more sense than people are sort of realising. That, yeah, if 30's not on this team, it's not happening. So, whether Klay leaves, I don't know. Maybe that's in relation to all the other drama that's going on. Another guy's been given, as I said, Draymond got the contract extension. I just don't think Golden State have really done the right thing there. But anyway, again, is there anyone besides Steph on the team that can actually do something offensively? Because right now they are genuinely struggling to look like anything beyond Steph Curry. I tell you what, though, a team that has totally turned it around, that no one expected at any point to be above 500, let alone 3 games above 500, the Houston Rockets, 3-0 on the week, 6-3 on their season. Best player there, Alfred Şengün, 22 points, 7.7 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal on the block on 2.7 turnovers. He is a different unit, but again, it's working for Houston right now. 65.1 from the field, epically efficient scoring. 3-pointers aren't going in, but if you're making 65 of 100 shots, you've got to be happy with that. Probably can improve from the free throw line. I like any bigger minimum at 70% there. Won all 3 of their games, dominated the Lakers, defeated New Orleans, defeated Denver. And is Şengün Houston's next All-Star? I think that's a genuine question that needs to be asked. Because the way he's playing right now, yeah, I genuinely think he is. I think he's one of the 12 best players in the West this year. And if you're going to be positionless across the board with everything else, why can't you be at the All-Star break? So Şengün really doing his thing. Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet doing their thing. Everyone else trying to chip in as well. And it's amazing. All the issues that were related to Memphis seem to be always thrown back on Dylan Brooks, but he's been nothing but an absolute godsend for Houston. So make of that as you wish. Good to see Şengün playing well. He's been threatening to do this for a couple of seasons. Now he's starting to break out. Had it not been for Tyrese Maxey, I'd probably have him as the most improved player in the league. Scotty Barnes, another guy that's up there. Mobley, another guy that's up there. So there's this young crop of guys that are really starting to step up, take that next step. The league being in really good hands on that front there. The Rockets in really good hands as well. And you know what? They're slowly just starting to disprove me, which is good to see. I thought we were going to have another Detroit-esque season so far, and we're not. So it's always good to have wing basketball for the team you support. So the Rockets slowly getting there, and Şengün, as I said, I think he's going to be that next All-Star. I think he's already one of the 12 best players in the West so far this season. Over to the other team in LA, and we'll go with the Lakers. 2-1 on the week, 5-5 on the season. Now, it is tough to say this, but he did play in more games than Davis, and he did play more games than LeBron. And unless you're going to average 50 in 3 games and not play the 4th, it's pretty hard for me to not have you as the team's best player. Rui Hachimura playing in all games there, and was pretty effective across the floor in the limited possessions he had. 16.7 points, 5.3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 2.7 steals, 0.7 blocks, less than a turnover. Epically efficient scoring, 63.3 from the field, 44.4% from deep, 2/3 of his free throws. Again, lost to Houston, but we're able to get wins over Phoenix and Portland to close that out. You just do have to wonder, though, with the Lakers, is that injury bug starting to bite again? That's certainly not something that the Lakers want to see. Anthony Davis is always going to have his concerns. LeBron, a left calf contusion that was non-impact. That's concerning there. You've got other guys who aren't in the lineup right now who really should be in the lineup, particularly when you consider they were sort of key recruits and key possessions back into this Lakers team. Again, I really still don't know what to make of them. 5-5 on the season through 10 games. Again, I just think the ball's in their court. They're either going to really dominate the game or they're going to play typical Lakers basketball in losses. They're going to have 5 or 10 minute spurts where they look like the best team on the planet. And outside of that, when the other team bites back, they don't have any fight in them. So Los Angeles need to work through that. Anthony Davis continuing to push through and making a genuine DPOY candidate performance again. This is a guy I don't know how he doesn't already have one. Certainly in his earlier years, I thought he was one of, if not the best defenders in the league. Prior to LA, had plenty of runs there, but no one gave him any credit. Of course not. He played in a smaller market. So We'll see what Los Angeles can do, but it's that injury bug that's concerning me with them. If they're going to start seeing mix and match in their lineups and their rotations, when it comes to key games, if they don't have chemistry, they're not going to win. And that's going to be proving crucial for them down the stretch. Speaking of teams that probably aren't going to make a comeback, struggling with chemistry and struggle down the stretch, that is going to be Memphis, and it already is them at the moment. 1-2 on the week, 2-8 on the season, 6 games below 500. They've essentially got to win 7 straight just to get above 500. It's a lot of work to do, and I just don't see it happening. There's that much that's got to go into it. Over an 18-game span, they're going to have to go 13-5 just to try and do this. It's a lot of work. I don't see them fighting back from that far back, and there's a lot of work and presence on Jar for that to happen. He's not even in the team yet, and he's not going to be there till at least game 26. Their best performer so far has been Desmond Bain. He's my main talking point here. 26.3 points, 4.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 0.7 steals, 1.7 blocks, 2.7 turnovers. Efficiency down on the week there. They lost to Miami 108-102, lost to Utah 127-121, did defeat the Clippers 105-101, which probably is indicative as well of just where the Clippers are sitting right now. But is Desmond Bain going to be a part of this team next year? Here's a guy that's coming out averaging 25-30 a game with Jar and getting no credit. Now he's doing it, shouldering the load by himself without Jar. And not much is being done outside of that. Yeah, it's awesome to be that solid second option, and it's great that he's able to compete and do everything there as a second option. But if I'm Desmond Bain, I'm seriously wanting to take a look at everything else that's around me. I'm seriously wanting to take a look at the other options, and if I have to weigh it up and go and play someone else, why not? It'll be really interesting to see. I think he's going to demand a lot in that free agent market. He's developed nicely there in Memphis. No one's paid attention to him. Everyone else has raved on, and fair enough too, to Jaren Jackson Jr. and the impact of Steven Adams. Ja Morant, obviously. Then you've got Dylan Brooks, who was with the team. You've now got Marcus Smart, a former Defensive Player of the Year. Brandon Clark's doing things. No one's really saying much about Desmond Bain other than the fact that he looked like a little kid in a meme on a child's play hoop. This guy can seriously play, he can seriously ball. I think he's going to demand a bit of money if he chooses to go elsewhere or stay. It's a good problem for Memphis to have, but right now it's the situation they don't want for him. We'll see how it goes. I wouldn't be surprised if Desmond Bain isn't a Memphis Grizzly by next season. I tell you who will be, though, on their same team for the future. Right now, that's Anthony Edwards. And the Minnesota Timberwolves are flying 3-0, 7-2 on the season. And they look like a genuine contender to the Nuggets in the West, or certainly a Western Conference finalist. Edwards on the week, 29 points, 5.3 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 2.3 steals, and a block, having that genuine impact on both ends of the floor. He's athletic, he's energetic, he just doesn't stop, he's competitive. I had him as the Rookie of the Year over LaMelo Ball a couple of seasons back. People didn't agree with it. All of a sudden, it's really clear-cut who the better player of those two are. Oh, and Edwards played more games that season for anyone who's keeping score at home. Not a great efficient week scoring-wise. Was able to get it done from the line. Won all 3 of their games, as we mentioned. How serious of a West contender are they? Right now, they're arguably the best offensive, defensive balanced team in the league, and everyone's gelling and finding their place. Even Karl Anthony Towns, one of the most disgruntled players I can think of, is happy with his situation right now. Rudy Gobert is now allowed to just be a defender. It's not much more that Minnesota really need to do right now. Everyone stays healthy, everyone plays their role, understands their bit, they're going to get it done. It's as simple as that. And right now, that's all Minnesota can do. Continue to win games, continue to stand out, compete, beat the big dogs, fight back under adversity. Just can't spend all the fuel tickets before the playoffs. When they start to do that, they're going to be in some trouble. However, right now, they're winning games. Edwards is leading the team. Gobert's playing good defense. Their role players are stepping up. Not much more Minnesota can do. They are a genuinely serious contender out in the West. A team that's probably not a serious contender anymore, though, and they sort of look like they were going to have that balance at one point with the injury bugs bit. Now the team's come back, and they're really not happy, as the New Orleans Pelicans. 0-3 on the week, 4-6 on the season. Their best player for the week, Brandon Ingram, returning to action. And it wasn't that quiet. It probably tells you how much people are starting to not care about New Orleans now and everything that was going on down there. 25 points, 4.7 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 0.3 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. passable from the field at 47%. You're going to need to be better from deep and certainly need to be better from the free throw line. There's no doubt about that. Lost all 3 games, but all of a sudden Zion Williamson isn't happy. So how do you deal with a guy with everything at his feet as far as potential, who's not happy, who doesn't want to do a thing? That's going to be the big question for New Orleans right now. Because if the guy that you've tried to build around isn't happy, decides he wants out, what do? Now, I don't blame New Orleans because they've turned around and said, well, you're never on the floor, you're never fit, you're never happy, you've had one of the worst off seasons for anyone not named Ja Morant, and you're here expecting us to just hand you the keys to the car. Now all of a sudden he's been told, maybe you need to sit in the passenger seat for a little bit. You let someone else drive. Wait until there's a bit more open road, flat surfaces, and you can sort of do your own thing. Better driving conditions. But he's not liking the fact that he has to adjust. He's not liking the fact that everything's not based around him. And I don't blame him because that's what's been promised to him. But if you're not going to live up to a promise yourself, you're not going to get delivered, what you want. So New Orleans in a really interesting spot there. If chemistry can lift and wins can get on the board, things might sort themselves. But if Zion Williamson's not happy, they're in a real spot of bother. A genuine spot of bother. So let's see what New Orleans can do. So CJ McCollum still to come back in, Brandon Ingram playing well. They do have a couple of pieces that can do things here or there. But right now, just got some work to do, some serious work to do. Particularly if Zion is going to continue to act out and try and make an example of those who really can't be made an example of because he can't set an example to begin with. New Orleans, again, in a tricky spot. Over to Oklahoma City, and a really interesting one for them. They started off like a house on fire. 2-1 on the week, 6-4 on the season, so 2 games above 500. They're still playing good basketball. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with a massive week himself. 37 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.7 steals, 1.3 blocks, 2 turnovers a game. Efficient scoring, though, nearly 61% from the field. Making a third of his threes. If he's going to shoot them, he probably does need to make around that 35 clip. Converting nicely at the line. Lost out to Sacramento, which wasn't ideal for them. Defeated Cleveland and Phoenix, though. I do just wonder whether that unicorn effect of Chet is going to impact everyone else, though. Because it's clear Shai's the man. There's no question that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the man on that team. I defy anyone to make a point that he's not. I mean, he's one of the 2 best shooting guards, well, this season at least, one of the 2 best shooting guards in the league. Anthony Edwards would like to also say hello. But Chet has the ability to do everything on the floor. So what does that mean for a Lou Dort and a Josh Giddey? And that's a serious question. I think we're going to still see probably another 15 games of this team really working it out. Of course, positionless offense for OKC really works well for them. And I think that's the big bonus they have for it not hindering the progress of players. Because everyone can just roll into a different position, into a different point on the floor and get things done. But if Chet's able to do so much and Shai's able to do so much and you become so reliant on 2 players and the other guys don't step up, you do start to have to wonder and be concerned exactly where they sit. 2 games above 500 is nice, though. Again, I think them and Orlando are the teams that are going to jump into the playoffs this year. I think Oklahoma City were just biding their time. But again, if this team slips and they get to a point at the All-Star break where it's like, fixture's not favourable, injuries aren't favourable, we've got plenty of draft picks. So I think that's the key for OKC. You either need to step up now or you need to step out. Right now, stepping up. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having an All-NBA first-team season again. Absolutely dominant. And again, it's a big reason why, again, I'll revert back to the Halliburton point in the Indiana portion of the video. Edwards and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, can you not have them All-NBA first team right now? Because it's positionless now. It's essentially the 5 best players going to the All-NBA first team. So right now you would have Embiid, Jokic, you'd have Edwards, you'd have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You've got to really think and look at things. Probably Luka Doncic too. Like, how are you going to fit that? How are you going to explain to Tyrese Halliburton, who's having one of the better all-time point guard seasons, that he's not going to make it. Well, can you deny these other guys? So, yeah, it's something I think people just need to consider as well. But, yeah, that unicorn effect of Chet, it does have its positives, but it could have its negatives. We'll see how it impacts the team moving forward. Over to Phoenix, 1-2 on the week, 4-6 on the season, so they're starting to try and get back towards that 500 there. Kevin Durant, the only healthy son, which is a hell of a scary thought when you look at it. But I'll get back to that point in a second. Durant, another good week. 30.3 points, 8.3 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal and a block each way. Efficiency from the floor overall, not great. As far as turning the ball over and converting his field goal attempts, but he's making 56% of his threes and 93% of his free throws. So, I mean, last week it was better for Kevin Durant just to settle for the three ball than it was for him to actually get inside. Don't see it very often. I mean, Kevin Durant's a player that all time is certainly one of those guys. Got the win against Chicago in a really tight game, but lost out to a game against the Lakers they really should have won. Could have been 2-1 on the week. Lost to the OKC Thunder there. Didn't get 100 points up. In today's game, you're not going to win that there. Has Devin Booker, though, proved why this is his team without playing? Because Phoenix aren't the same without him. Nothing looks the same without him. I mean, Devin Booker's been the man on this team for 8 years now. And yes, he was the man on this team when they went to the finals. He was the reason they went to the finals. I don't know, it's a really weird one there. Of course, Bradley Beal's coming back in, Booker's injured. But you've only got to look at the impact that he's constantly having on this squad and the way this squad plays. He's a great all-around scorer as a guard. So there isn't any flaws as far as, you can hide guards defensively in this league. And Kevin Durant's got no choice as a bigger player. There are going to be other bigs he needs to guard who can take advantage of him. So even though he might have 30, there's a chance the guys he guards down the other end combine for 32. So, how do you look at that? I just think Devin Booker's proved why it's his team. Why it has always been his team. And at this point, why it will always be his team. I love Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's a top 25 player all time. But really tough for me to go against the grain of this being Booker's team. When he's in and the system's working, they're playing well. Now, don't get me wrong, when Devin Booker out of any team is going to have an impact. That's obvious. But when you look at all the success that they've had, it's all around Devin Booker. And when you take him out of that situation, it's not Devin, the team isn't the same. That's just pure and simple. So, yeah, I just think he's proved it's his team. And once they get back, they're going to be a lot better. But right now, until he gets back, they're going to be a 500 team at best, I think. Team that's not 500 at best, though, is the Portland Trailblazers. Didn't win a game all week. They're 3-6 on the season. Jeremy Grant with a quiet start to the week there. 30.5 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Didn't have a steal, got 2 blocks a game on 3 turnovers. 47.6 from the field. Another guy who shot better from deep than he did from the field. Casual at the stripe. Didn't win their games, as I said. Lost to Sacramento and lost to the Lakers. The impact of Robert Williams' injury probably hasn't truly been felt yet, but I think that's going to be the biggest impact that's going to happen with this team. He's one of the best defenders in the league. Had a case as Defensive Player of the Year 2 seasons ago when Marcus Smart won it, on that same Boston team that went to the finals. Well, not that same Boston, that was 2022. So how does that team now look? DeAndre Ayton really has to step up. Malcolm Brogdon really has to step up. Shaedon Sharpe needs to continue to play well. Jeremy Grant needs to continue to play well. I don't know. I just don't know what this team's going to do when they lose one of the best defenders in the league. I don't know what any team would do, genuinely, as far as what they would do losing one of the best defenders in the league. They've got to do something. They're going to have to do it quick. 0-2, again, competitive against the Lakers, competitive against Sacramento. They're missing their closer because he decided to go to Wisconsin. That's all I'll say. They needed to rebuild, there's no doubt about it, but at what cost they've done that, I don't quite know. We'll see how it continues to perform. Jeremy Grant has been proven to be a nice plug-in piece for the last few seasons. He's done it again this week. But they're going to have to find some consistency, and they're going to have to find some defense really quickly, because if they don't do that, they're going to continue to be on struggle street. Speaking of teams that were on struggle street and bounced back, the Sacramento Kings, 3-0 on the week, 5-4 on the season. And Domantas Sabonis, well, he's being Domantas Sabonis. To get the Kings back over the line, he went triple-double mode for the week. 22.3 points, 11 rebounds, 10.7 assists. Turnovers were there, but again, he's very high usage right now. 66.7 from the field and 50% from deep. They won all 3 games. And I asked this question last year, I asked this question at the start of the season, and I've had it in general conversation. Can Sabonis play a fully fledged Jokic role? Because that's the skill set he has. And that's the team he's got around him. They need more defense. I don't think anyone's going to question the fact that the Sacramento Kings need more defenders. But if you're going to have a big guy like this who can score efficiently from all over the floor, is a good rebounder, can pass, why can't he? Really, really wonder why he can't do it. Because it's what Sacramento need right now. Of course, when De'Aaron Fox is going to go out injured, they need someone to step up. It can't be an option to roll in and out of that style of offense. Okay, it works when a player's not there, and I think it's great as a team that you have that option, but it's not viable long term to be jumping in and out of priority on the offensive end to win a basketball game. It's just not going to happen. It just doesn't work. But a nice week for Sabonis, a good bounce back for Sacramento. 3-0 on the week, get themselves back above 500. Looked like they were going to be very turbulent there until they turned it up, particularly when you look at OKC and Cleveland being 2 teams that, need to be able to get the job done against. Portland, it was expected, and they just got over the line, but it was expected. But stepping up there, Sabonis, that's why he's been a perennial All-NBA contender for me for the last few years. That's why he's one of the best bigs in the league, and again, a guy that's, a top 4, top 5 centre, having that, not even clear cut as one of the best centres in the league. So good work there for Sacramento, good work there for Sabonis. They do have a little bit more work to do. Other side now, San Antonio, they certainly have a bit of work to do, despite the fact they have one of the favourites for Defensive Player of the Year, which was always going to happen. 0-3 on the week, 3-7 on the season. Wemby, 20.3 points, 9.7 rebounds, 4.3 assists. The defense is still there. The efficiency is slowly coming along. They lost all 3 games. Who's the veteran that's going to guide this team? Well, the ultimate question right now is they need a senior player who is going to step up, who is going to take responsibility on this team. It's all right to have a bunch of young guys who can get about it, who can play some good basketball, some entertaining basketball, and keep the fans engaged. But you're not going to win games, you're not going to build anything unless you've got a veteran. The Spurs have done that through their veterans time and time and time again. And realistically, it's the first time in 30 years that this team has tried to do a rebuild without some form of veteran on the team. And I know the game has changed, but no one has ever had success without having a core impact of senior guys or veteran players who can turn around and just keep the ship steady. Because young guys, they want everything. I want the shots. I want to be I want a guy to make the winning play. I want the ball in my hands all the time. I want to be responsible for everything that's going on here. Well, that's great. But then when it goes wrong and you're not willing to stand up, then there's going to be issues. We'll see how it pans out. I just think the Spurs need a veteran to guide the group. Until they get that veteran, they're going to be in a spot of bother. Finally, over Utah, 1-1 on the week. 3-7 on the season. So, when you're going to look in comparison to the Spurs, they had the exact same record and were actually travelling worse than them before this week started. Best player for the week, Lauri Markkanen, 25 and 8 for him. Some good defense, some efficient scoring. Lost to Indiana, defeated Memphis. I just wonder if they're too reliant on their top 5 guys. Who else is there? You've got Clarkson, you've got Sexton, you've got Markkanen, you've got Collins, and you've got Kessler. And that's who they rely on. They don't, and no one else does anything. It's okay to be top heavy, but you've got to be elite top heavy. Like Denver top heavy. You've got to have a guy that's so far and away better than anything going that's how your success would develop. And that's a nice rounded team, don't get me wrong. Sexton, Clarkson, Collins, Markkanen, and Walker Kessler. That's fine. But if you're too reliant on all of those guys, it's not going to get any results. And that's been the case with them for a while now.
I mean, they looked really good last year when they went on a run. They just weren't able to really get anything truly going. You know, injuries played a part. They fell off. They tried to fight back. They just couldn't get there, but they had their moments. And now they're going to really need to try and find those moments a lot because they are on struggle street. 4 games below 500, guys being inconsistent, not necessarily finding exactly what you need to do is always going to bode to problems there. We'll see how Utah continue to bounce back. Again, I thought Markkanen was all NBA level last year. Clarkson stepped up again. John Collins is looking to have his moment in the sun. He certainly wasn't getting that with Atlanta, so we'll see how that continues to play there. But a bit of work to do for Utah. I just think they're too top-heavy reliant, and they're too top-heavy reliant without anyone standing above the pack as far as how good they are. But let's get to our 10 best teams in the West as of the end of the week. The Nuggets, the Mavericks, and the Timberwolves, clearly the 3 best teams in the West right now. The Rockets have made a move. Thunder's still there. Kings making a move. Warriors have slumped. Don't know how the Lakers are keeping up. The Suns still keeping up. Somehow the Pelicans still keeping up. But it's clearly becoming more and more of a 2 to 3 horse race in the West. By comparison, you know, there might be 5 out of 30 teams that can truly win a championship this year. It's not ideal. And it probably goes back to more of a norm that we've seen across the league for the last 15 years because everyone hated the idea that there was parity in the league. It was so silly. Everyone wanted parity in the league. They wanted more teams to have an opportunity. And when more teams were given more of an opportunity and teams weren't winning big games, even diehards who desperately didn't want the Warriors and Cavs to just be the 2 teams, and I can name plenty of people who were just constantly whinging about it, now that there's parity in the league, don't like it. It makes no sense whatsoever. But right now, as I said, there are your 10 teams of the West. I think you've got 5 teams right now in title contention, 3 of them in the West, 2 of them in the East. It is only early stages though, so that may change. West Player of the Week. It was going to be a tough one there, and I nearly went Anthony Edwards, much like the league, but it was very hard for me when you weigh up the fact that he had to step up and he had to change his game and he had to do everything to get those wins. I had to give it to Sabonis. 22.3 points, 11 rebounds, 10.7 assists, had the defensive numbers. We've gone through that there. 3 games, 37.8 minutes a game, 3-0 record. Sabonis stepping up, doing everything that needs to do. Again, he's a guy who's clearly a top 4, top 5 center in the league, and I can't guarantee he's going to be on an All-NBA team this season. At this point, I think he's the 4th best center in the league this year. And I don't know whether that's going to be good enough to get him on an All-NBA team. He's been able to play for a while now. He was a very good player in Indiana. No one rated him in Indiana. Then he makes the move. Sacramento are in the doldrums, and it's not like looking like they're going to be able to do everything. And then he starts to step up with De'Aaron Fox, and everyone's now starting to pay a bit more attention to just how good of a player he is. Has a very similar ability to his dad. I think if he can master that as much as his dad mastered it, the league could be in a hell of a lot more trouble as well. We'll see how it continues to play out there, but Domantas Sabonis, my Western Conference Player of the Week for Week 3. That's been my review for Week 3 of the 2023 NBA season. Thanks for tuning in. That's been me, guys. I'm out.